Today we're going to be reviewing the steps for solving one-step equations and learning how to solve one-step equations that have fractions as coefficients. Remember that each operation has an opposite or inverse operation. The inverse of addition is subtraction and subtraction is addition. If we want to undo an addition problem, we use subtraction. To undo a subtraction problem, we use addition. The inverse of multiplication is division, and the inverse of division is multiplication. So if we want to undo a multiplication problem, we use division, and to undo a division problem, we use multiplication. Let's look at an addition problem. The first step is to draw a line through the equal sign. This helps us to make sure we're working on the correct side of the equation. Next, we highlight our variable, or we can find our variable. We always want to make sure that we look to see what is it that we're trying to solve for. We're trying to solve for x, so we look at whatever's next to x in order to undo the operation. We determine which operation is happening to the variable. In this case, we're adding 6 to x. So to stop adding 6, or to undo adding 6, or to move 6, we subtract 6 from both sides. We use the inverse operation of addition. Subtract 6 from both sides, and the 6's cancel out and become 0, and we're left with x equals 18. So now we've solved for the variable. We can always check our answer by plugging 18 into x, and we see 18 plus 6 does equal 24. And we follow these steps for every time that we solve one-step equations. We're going to draw a line through our equal sign, find our variable. We're going to look at the operation that's being used with our variable. We're subtracting 5, so we're going to use the inverse operation of addition to solve this problem. We add 5 to both sides and solve. The 5's cancel out, and x equals 25. Next, we can substitute 25 in to check our answer. 25 minus 5 is 20. If we're going to undo multiplication, if we look at this problem, it says 3 times x equals 24. We're going to use division to undo the multiplication. So we draw a line through our equal sign, find our variable. We've determined that we're multiplying, so we do the inverse operation of division. We divide both sides by 3, and we see that x will equal 8. This is because the 3 divided by 3 equals 1, and 1 times x is x, so x equals 8. We were able to cancel out the number next to the variable. In this case, x is being divided, so we use the opposite operation of multiplication. We draw a line through our equal sign, find our variable. Notice it's being divided by 7, so we multiply both sides by 7. When we do this, our 7's cross-reduce, and we're left with 1 times x, and x equals 28. We can check our answer. Does 28 divided by 7 equal 4? It does, so we know we're correct. We need to make sure that we're always working on the correct side of the equation. Notice in this example, x is on the right side of the equal sign. So we're going to draw our line, but we're going to look at the right side of our equation. Since we're taking 9 away from x, we're going to add 9. Notice we did not subtract 3. We add 9 because we move the number that's next to the variable. Whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side to keep the equation balanced. So when we solve, we see that 12 equals x because negative 9 plus 9 is 0. We always like to write our final answer with the variable on the left side. In this equation as well, if you look at the right side of the equal sign, that's where we find x. So we draw a line through our equal sign. Since we're adding 5 to x, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. When we do that, we get x equals 15. Then 5 minus 5 becomes 0. That's what we want to do. We want to move the number that's next to the variable. Negative 7 plus x equals 12. Draw a line through your equal sign. This time the x is on the left side of the equation. It's adding a negative 7. To get rid of the negative 7, or to move the negative 7 away from x, we're going to add 7 to both sides. When we do that, we see that x equals 19. In this equation, you see that the x is on the right side of the equal sign. So we look to the right side to solve. Then we ask what operation is happening to x. This is negative 5 times x, so we're going to divide by negative 5. Do not add 5 here because we are not subtracting 5 from x. We're multiplying negative 5 times x, so we use division to solve. Divide by the number next to the variable. If we divide by negative 5 on both sides of the equation to keep it balanced, we get an answer of negative 11. X equals negative 11. Negative 5 times negative 11 is positive 55, so this is correct. Today we're going to add a new type of coefficient. Sometimes we'll see equations where we have fractions as coefficients. The number next to the variable here is 2/3. To move a number next to a variable, we divide by the number next to the variable. In this equation, because 2/3 was next to x, we're going to divide by 2/3 on both sides. Divide by the number next to the variable. If you recall from our lesson on solving division with fractions, when we divide a fraction, we keep, change, flip. So in other words, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. When there's a fraction next to a variable, we multiply by the reciprocal. This is the same thing as dividing by the fraction. So when you see a fraction next to a variable, multiply by the reciprocal. In this equation then, if you notice when we multiply by the reciprocal with the number next to x, the fraction next to x, it cancels out with cross-reducing, and we're left with just the variable x on the left side. On the right side, we're going to cross-reduce, and we see that 24 divided by 2 is 12, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So when we solve this equation, we get x equals 12 times 3, or 36. When you see a fraction next to a variable, multiply by the reciprocal. In this equation, again, we see that we have a fraction next to the variable. We look to the side that has the variable and we see 4/5 times x. So we're going to do 4/5 divided by 4/5. Since 4/5 divided by 4/5, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. When there's a fraction next to a variable, multiply by the reciprocal. So again, we go to cross-reduce. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. We're done simplifying on the left side. On the right side, you see if we cross-reduce, these cancel out to become 1. So we're left with only the variable x. On the left side, we multiply across. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15, and this equals x. So x equals negative 15. When there's a fraction next to the variable, multiply by the reciprocal. If you remember this every time you see a fraction next to a variable, you say this chant, you'll always know what to do. When there's a fraction next to a variable, multiply by the reciprocal. The goal in algebra is to solve for an unknown quantity. We isolate the variable to find a single value. To do this, we need to find the variable and then do the inverse operation to isolate the variable. When there is a fraction next to the variable, multiply by the reciprocal. That's all. Thank you.